Credit stacking, ladies and gents. I get this question asked probably every other day. Every other hour is really what I should say. So credit stacking, is it effective? How does it work? And I'm kind of gonna give it to you. I think it's in the next slide. If it's not, I'll give it to you. So essentially, what you're doing is you're just submitting credit card applications in a specific order with multiple banks in order to access large amounts of unsecured credit or unsecured capital. In its most basic form, that's essentially what it is, right? And so the whole terminology of 0% funding derives from this. Is it legit? Yes. Can you do it yourself? 100%. Am I going to show you a quick framework here? 100%. The reason why I'm giving you this right here is because with credit stacking, it's sexy. And which is why I left it more toward the end of the presentation, which is where we're at now, middle to end, because it's one that a lot of people are probably hanging on for, right? Even though it gets better. But credit stacking is only going to take you so far, which is why I want you to also think about business lines of credit and business term loans, because the way that I see credit cards is Army Swiss knives. So they get you in and out of situations fast. Yep. But you also want to think long-term with lines of credit and term loans, because you're actually able to get some real cash out of those bad boys and pump them into some serious projects that you could only do with credit cards if you found the way to liquidate them. And you guys have seen the systems are starting to get a little bit tighter for credit card liquidation. That's why I'm giving you this answer. So credit card stacking.
You guys need all of them. You need all these debt weapons. They're like little different tools in your toolbox. Like you need all of these debt weapons, and they're all meant for different purposes. Like, yes. I'll do a whole debt weapon call. Like, I think that's probably really needed to really break these things down, how to use them in certain situations, how I would use them. I'll do a call on that. But anyways,
it's going to be helpful, because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have questions after this. Like, hey, I got approved for a line of credit. Hey, I got approved for a business credit card. Like, what do I do with it? So 100%. I mean, you got my vote on that. I'll be on that call for sure to watch you. Credit card stacking pitfalls. I want you to screenshot this. I want you to put this on your fridge. I want you to put this whenever you go to apply for a couple of credit cards. Like, keep it in front of you. Filling out the credit card information incorrectly. That's like elementary, but you'd be surprised how much that happens. Applying with a weak or thin credit profile, applying with a business that's not set up properly or structured correctly, right? Going to banks and credit unions that don't service your line of work. I see that happen all the time. So if I want to, let's say, get funding for construction, which happens quite a bit, and I'm going to, let's say, a credit union that they just don't service that. They're more of like along the retail sector, or they're just more alongside of maybe trucking. I could be shooting myself in the foot, not submitting the right applications in the right order, and then submitting mismatching information for multiple applications, not just one. And so this right here is a typical credit stacking breakdown. So very simple framework, very, again, surface level, but this is essentially how I want you to view it. At the top, you'll have, let's say, 2 tier A banks, you have 2 regional banks, and then you have 2 small banks or credit unions, which are usually with like third-party underwriters, right? With tier A banks, I'm going to give you guys some here in just a second, an exact like layout that I would do. But with tier A banks, I want you guys to think about the ones that we just finished breaking down that do all of their in-house underwriting. So let's say if you wanted to put Chase and American Express, that would be the tier A banks. For regional, that would be more alongside of Citizens Bank and then PNC. If I wanted to go small bank, I would think maybe Ameris, and then I would think maybe Bank United, or I would think Bank OZK. Another example that I can give you guys. So that would be essentially like a very simple like shell of how you would set this thing up, right? Do you need to always hit 6 accounts? No. I found that the threshold is right between 4 to 7. Anything more than that, I think and I think even 7 is pushing it. If I'm just honest with you guys, I would say 3 to 6 is like a nice sweet spot, especially if you can double dip inside of the same account. So that's the other thing. If I have a tier A bank, and let's say that tier A bank is American Express, and let's say I can go in with a business Blue Cash and a business Gold, I'm essentially pulling two lines outside of the same bank versus having to do. So when you see each of these, it's not that you're getting approved for 6 individual products. You could have 1 to 2 products that you get at each bank. So now you're walking out with 12 lines. I just want you to be mindful of how many applications you're placing within each bank, because that does speak to the system.
And on top of the credit stacking is knowing what bureaus it pulls from, what
And
FICO it pulls from. Like, because you could run this sequence if you do it right, right? So one of the things that I recommend too is, if you're gonna do this, definitely if you're applying to, let's say you're in Florida and you're applying to somebody in Nevada, you want to have your VPN on for Nevada. Like you don't want to be having, like, I'm a big VPN guy if you're trying to apply for a bank outside of your state or your region. I just find that to be more helpful, because these things are automatic approvals, and they're like, where's this IP applying from, things like that. The other thing is so many of us have multiple computers, right? I like to be able to have these things automatically, filled out and push go at the same time on multiple computers at the same time, because when you push these applications through, they're gonna hit the bureau, right? And so you only have so much time. So like if you have two things ready to go, click, boom, next tab, click, boom, like it's getting harder and harder and harder to do it. But my thing is if you have multiple devices, same VPNs or whatever the case is, just know what the heck you're doing, because it's like what somebody said in the chat, if you don't do it right, you're gonna crash. Like, and people try to do this thing because they find somebody telling them in a Facebook group, and then like it's a mess, right? Like the card they could get approved for, they get a super low limit or they get denied for, then the other ones are through manual review, denied, and it's just a mess. So you got to know how this framework works, and then the sequence in which to run this, just like what he's saying, because if you don't, it won't work. It will be horrible results with a ton of inquiries, like you're at a car lot. So just know what you're doing before you do it, because this is a great way to get funding at one sequence and then get in the garden, right? And when you're in the garden, now when you pick your flowers and you pick your fruits and your vegetables, right? When you get your funding, right? And you have harvest time. Now you get into the garden time. And when you're in the garden time, that is a time to build out the relationships with the next round of funding that you're going to go through 6 months to a year down the road. You want to start building out those things while you're in the garden, doing research on different banks, putting money in different banks, leveraging your credit and building out and targeting these banks and moving money into these banks, right? There's a whole science and a system to this thing, man. And so it's not just about the harvest time and about the credit card stacking. It's also about your garden time will also determine your harvest time, right? Some of these things right here with Elon, you don't need a business relationship with, right? As far as the credit cards go. But when you're trying to do something like a credit union, for example, like a credit union that does their own underwriting, you're going to want to have that banking relationship with them. And at the same time, you may not always want to do credit card stacking because you may want to go for a line of credit. You know what I'm saying? Like that's also another revolving line. So there's just a lot of things to consider. Like I did a podcast today with Geo Breeze, right? The travel hacking chick. We did a podcast today. We talked about one of the biggest mistakes people are doing is they're just applying for credit cards, not knowing what they're doing, churning, getting low limits, having a crappy profile. And like so many travel hackers, like they're so after the sign-on bonuses that they don't care about their credit profile. All they care about is their score. But what they fail to realize is when they want a home or when they want lines of credit and when they want this, they got all of these cards open. The age of accounts is super low. They don't know how to like manipulate the age of accounts, right? And then they look super desperate with crappy limits. It's like, dude, like you have a crappy profile. And your profile is what's going to get you approved, not your score. Your profile is your resume, right? Your score is your reputation. Write that down. Your resume is your profile. Your score is your reputation. So your score matters. Your reputation matters, right? You know, and your profile is your resume matters. They both matter, right? But we have got it stuck in our heads that if I have an 800 credit score, 740 credit score. I can get approved for everything. Absolutely freaking not. You can. Because if you haven't shown that you can handle 20,000, why would somebody give you 50? If you could handle 10, why would somebody give you 20? Right? So think like the bank. Would you lend to you? If you saw somebody come to you and say, give me $20,000, okay. And you pull up the report and you see how many people they've asked for money, that's an inquiry, right? So if they've asked everybody and their mama for money, how would you really want to lend to them? Why do they need all this money? Why are they going to 100 people asking for money? Right? If you see all of these new accounts that they've opened up, why are they opening so many accounts? They're not a business. So I'm talking this on the personal side. Like, it's so like, you got to think about this as a banker. You got to be strategic. Would you lend to you? Are you fundable? If you're not, what do you need to do differently? And it all starts personal and then it goes business. But here's the key. Here's the secret, guys. Everything in business is personal because businesses are ran by people, right? So even though it's not personal credit, you still have to be in the mindset that it's personal, right? Would I lend money to this business? And who's behind this business? Who's personally guaranteeing this business? What track record has this person showed in their industry? How much cash flow are they bringing in on their bank accounts? What industry are they in? Like, you gotta take the full picture and stop narrowing down on 1 to 2 things. Like, it's not just about the score and it's not just about the bank that can give you the money. It's about all the other things that make up the big picture. We have to think big picture with credit or we're not going to win in the game.
Yep.
All you, bro. You're Batman, bro. I'm just Robin in this game.
That's it right there, bro. I mean, you nailed it. It's not just about the banks. Everyone is always wondering, hey, what's the bank? What's the bank? What's the bank? They're not even set up right. Like they're not even set up right. It's like bringing a basketball over into a baseball field. Like, bro, you don't even have the right tools. Like, you're just going to strike out. And so that's how I want you guys to view it.